So now we welcome Cooper, who's another member of Greater Wellington. We are less than half the people here, I promise. But I'm fairly confident he has more good news for us.
Yeah. This will just be the third of three plants that were likely introduced for medicinal reasons and which are difficult to identify. So it's been a great afternoon. And thank you all for sticking it out and making it to the end of the day with me. I really appreciate it. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Europi te whakapaparangamai enari, ko Bishop California te whenua tupu, ko Winuba Mount Tom, toku mauna, ko Owens River, toku awa, ke whakaoriori e oe no ho ana, heo kai tohu tohu whakaoro ora, taio o I te pana matua taio, ko Cooper O, tēnā koutou katoa. So, my name's Cooper French. I work for Greater Wellington Regional Council. My job position is I'm an environment restoration advisor, and I work in something called the Key Native Ecosystem space. My job is awesome. I get to go all of these cool places and look at all of these cool things and interact with all of this stuff, and it's excellent. And today I'm going to talk to you about a particular pest plant. But before I do that, the Key Native Ecosystem Program, run through Greater Wellington Regional Council, identifies and works to protect biodiverse areas and spaces within our region. These include a lot of Greater Wellington owned areas, so Kaitoke Regional Park, Bering Head, Queen Elizabeth Park. This also includes sites that are located on private land, where we work with private landowners to do things like pest animal control, pest plant control, monitoring, revegetation, all sorts of stuff. So the plant I'm going to be talking about today is common polypody, Polypodium vulgare. It's native to Europe, Africa, and Asia, sort of a patchwork, temperate distribution. It's all over the place. It's an evergreen fern, and it's got these creeping rhizomes that have a nasty habit of breaking off from each other when you're trying to remove them. And it has these bright orange sorae, these spore-bearing bodies on the undersides of all of the leaves. There are a couple of ferns in the same family, though none in the same genus, that are native to New Zealand. There are two ferns that are fairly common that are likely to be confused with common polypody, hound's tongue and mountain hard fern. But if you know what you're looking for, the identification is really easy. On hound's tongue, the frond never dissects all the way to the rachis, whereas on common polypody, it does dissect all the way to the bottom of the rachis. And as a result, those spore-bearing bodies that are present on the underside of the leaves, they show up on that rachis margin in hound's tongue, and they don't in common polypody. In mountain hard fern, the best idea is the fact that mountain hard fern has distinct fertile fronds. So some of the fronds aren't spore-bearing, but then it has fronds that are explicitly spore-bearing, and those have pinnae rather than these sorae, these little lumps. So, first found in the Port Hills down in Canterbury in 1980. That's where we get our first record of it. And then progressively over the next couple decades, you have spread up through the Canterbury region, and we have one example as early as 2006 of it being discovered in the North Island. So this looks fairly minor so far. You've got some buildup here, but then things really start to explode. Some of this is the result of observations in iNaturalist just increasing all of our data. But you can also see that there's spread into the interior in Canterbury. There's Blenheim, Wellington, the very tip of the North Island, and some interior sites in the North Island. So this is particularly important to my work because a number of the sites that it is immediately spread to in the North Island are at key native ecosystem sites. So these are sites that we really care about. We are trying to preserve the natural biodiversity. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this northernmost side of the North Island. This is Cape Palliser Lighthouse and its associated key native ecosystem site. So this is just the occurrence from this last season of control as recorded by our pest plant team, many of whom are in the audience today. And you can ask them just how steep and crumbly these hills are and just how hard it was to get around. But in addition to following up on old sites where we did find regrowth, we were also finding several new sites in this. But we were feeling fairly good about this. And then in the course of other work in the area, our team also found a couple other sites, both to the west and the east of this. And if we're seeing those, then there's a high likelihood that in these unsurveyed areas between here, which seems like suitable habitat, there are probably more infestations. But why should we care? What's the big deal? It's a fern, so what? It's prolific and it has an incredibly smothering habitat. If you've been to the Port Hills in Canterbury, you may have seen it. It forms these huge walls coming off of the cliff edges and basically dominates all of the local vegetation. It's highly adaptable to those rocky situations. And if you think about where our rare and uncommon native plants are, a lot of them are in those little crevice-growing, rocky, very precarious situations. The other thing about it is because it spreads by spores, those spores spread easily and they persist for really long periods of time. So how would we get rid of it? Di Carter, who's a regional parks ranger at Christchurch City Council, has the most experience dealing with this weed. In 2009 and 2010, she did a trial of a ton of common herbicides, glyphosate, triclopyr, all the good stuff, lots of different combinations of adjuvants. The one that worked best in those trials was metsulfuron, but it needed 2 specific adjuvants to get really good control. And she found that she could get optimal control by pre-summer spraying, did not tend to get regrowth after that, but if controlled in autumn, often resulted in resprouting. And there's another problem with controlling in autumn that I'll talk about later. This trial should have continued for another year. Unfortunately, the Christchurch, I always mess this up, Christchurch earthquake happened and she was unable to continue that. Here are just some of the other, so anecdotally, over the following the following decade, she's had experience with a number of other herbicides. She was supposed to start on another herbicide trial. It was planned right around 2019, 2020. Again, interrupted by COVID. But X-Tree Wet and Dry, formerly X-Tree Basil, if applied directly to the rhizomes, gives great control. This new one, Weed Weapon Extra Strength, which is the only formulation currently which has a mix of glyphosate and this new saflufenicil, which I will just call SAF for the rest of the talk. It has so far, been shown to give really good results. We've heard anecdotally from other people that this is also showing really good results for some of our Calistigia vines and possibly stinking iris, and I'd be interested to hear other people's experiences with this particular chemical. Your other option is manual control. The one reason to do manual control is that it's more reliable. If you can get all of the rhizomes out, you will have successfully eliminated that particular growth. There are problems with it. It's time consuming. It's not always possible to dig the rhizomes out if they're up in a rocky cliff, and there's a much greater potential for accidental dispersal. So if you were some idiot who was helping out your pest plant team, you probably wouldn't want to have put your pack right down right next to the plant that you were pulling out, and you probably wouldn't want to be wearing fabric gloves. You'd probably want to be wearing nitrile. However, there are a couple of things for manual control that I'll go over right now in biosecurity along with everything else. On arrival on site, best practice is to spray down with some sort of sterilizing solution. We use 5% bleach, regularly swapping out your gloves, bagging them, everything like that. Disposing of all plant material collected, that's fronds, stems, rhizomes, in sealed plastic bags. On your way out, contain, wash, and dry all gear. Something that I think gets overlooked a lot in biosecurity stuff, so accurate GPS waypoints, good pictures, and really good tape labeling of the site. Because one thing that can happen is you can go back to recheck on a site and end up walking through your infestation over and over again as you're trying to search out what you're doing. We have not used these, but you should also consider sterigene or methylated spirits, which have been shown to work for other spore stuff. Anyone who's familiar with cowrie dieback protection will be familiar with these two products. So, something to consider. These sites up in here, which are also at biocontrol sites that are regularly visited by our pest plant team. Did we do this? Did we spread these here? And the fact is, there's just no way to know. It's spread a lot of ways. It's spread by wind. Probably its initial arrival on the North Island is by a big southerly, just grabbing some of those spores and bringing them all the way from the Port Hills up here. There's a ton of different human action that can drive this. You've got hikers, you've got machinery, you've got people out doing environmental work. We are not actually the only people doing environmental work in these spaces. And just as with our past two, there's intentional cultivation. It's a part of traditional Western medicine. It is apparently part of a concoction called horny goat weed, which is available for sale in less reputable supermarkets in Australia, I am told. It can also be spread, obviously, by wild animals moving through it. You can imagine a possum or a pig moving through these fronds is going to pick up spores really readily. In New Zealand, the highest sporulation is from summer to autumn, so you're going to have that spore load where those sori are turning from that bright yellow. They'll be darkening and going black, and that's when they're releasing spores. That's happening from December to April. We also know that that's a bad time to control them, so in general, you should be trying to control your polypodium earlier in the year. Lastly, if we think about, and we've seen this graph a couple of times this year, or today, the lag phase, if our initial recording is 1980, and general rule of thumb for plants in New Zealand is somewhere around 50 or 55 years, we are rapidly approaching our inflection point. So now is the time to act and to do something about it. But there's more bad news. So Hongoika, which is the site of the first North Island specimen, you'll forgive bad GBIF geodata here, but it's not actually out in the middle of the water. It would have been somewhere over here. 4 specimens were collected. We don't actually know from how many plants, but there were 4 specimens collected for herbaria at that time. And then Leon Perry, who's really, he's the curator at Te Papa, went back in 2025 and surveyed 17 sites in a single day across here, growing out of rocks, growing in amongst grass. There's no chance for manual control in this case. And this is not K&E, it's not any sort of protected area. This is just public, or not public land, but it's privately owned land that's open to the public. So it's a difficult spot to initiate control to begin with. Sorry to end on such a down note, but I'm going to go straight into my acknowledgements. This talk would not have been possible without Leon Perry, probably New Zealand's expert in terms of common polypody. So he's at Te Papa. Di Carter, who's without a doubt the expert when it comes to control of polypodium fern. She's got years of experience with this. The Greater Wellington Pest Plant Team, they are the ones who do the hard mahi in controlling this. They contributed, they helped me review this talk, and a number of them are in the space today, and I appreciate them being here. iNaturalist contributors. So Every picture of polypodium in this presentation derives from someone who has allowed Creative Commons usage of their iNaturalist observation. So huge respect for that. And finally, to the NETS conference organizers for allowing me to speak to you today.
Thank you, Cooper. Any questions?
Jim.
How do you think that the future control of polypodium is going to look?
Site-led. No, I think there's a reasonable expectation that we can continue to tamp down the occurrence in the North Island. We should jump onto every infestation we reasonably can and control it to the best of our abilities. I don't think eradication is a realistic goal. So I think it's just keeping everything tamped down and preserving biodiversity values where we can.
Sorry, through your research, did you happen to know how long the spores last for polypodium?
I saw everywhere from 7 months to 2 years. So it's variable and one of those things where it seems to be dependent on environment. Yeah?
Has it been found south of Christchurch?
No. There are no records south of that Port Hills infestation. No.
Perhaps it's because people aren't looking for it.
This is the most likely thing. Most people are fern blind, for lack of a better term, and it does look in passing so much like some of our native ferns that I think it's probably being looked over. One of the reasons I don't think our pest plant team are the ones responsible for it and that they're just the ones who are picking it up is you really have to have interacted with it, seen it once in order to ID it. And those people are then going out and seeing it in other places, and that's what's happening there. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. There's 3 or 4 super iNaturalist users, botanist types in Christchurch, and there's multiple universities.
Yeah.
Seems less likely to be there than anywhere
Mm.
an observation.
I take your point. I think that's
But
fair. Yeah.
I'm not saying no.
No.